In simplest terms, annotation groups are used for automated annotation for items such as stationing and tick marks along alignments, perhaps slope grades on profiles or curve lengths on horizontal or vertical curves. Also, we can use annotation groups to automate the annotation of mapped survey information or drainage and utilities. Annotation groups are stored in a DGN library, and they are accessed under the Explorer in the Annotation Groups section. We have annotation groups and we have annotation definitions. Annotation definitions are what actually stores the information. The groups gather the information from the different definitions. For example, in this situation, I have an annotation group called alignment stationing. And if I right-click on that, I can select to manage. In this annotation manager, I can expand this, resize it, I can open categories, etc. And if you look on the left, these are links to the individual annotation definitions. And so the annotation definitions, as you can see, we have plan, profile, cross-section groups. We also have plan, profile, and cross-section definitions. If I look under the plan linear annotation definitions, for example, I have an entry here that labels the bearing of my tangents on my horizontal alignments. And so if I select that particular entry, I can look at the different properties that make up that particular label. I can even turn on the display in the annotation manager and get a preview of what that would look like. And so if I zoom in on, for example, this, I can see the stations, I can see the tick marks, I can see bearing labels in the middle of the tangents. I can see curve labels. For example, here's a curve label from a text favorite. And so all of these annotation definitions are linked to this annotation group. And so I can select to add an annotation definition, for example, and I can either create a new one or I can add an existing annotation definition that is in my list that is not used. If it is not used, it will show a different icon. If it is used, it shows an icon of a paperclip showing that it's already included in this annotation group. And so right now, all of the annotation definitions in this DGN library for Plan Linear are included in my annotation group. These annotation definitions can draw lines, they can place text, and all of the different aspects here that you see. The examples workspace delivers a lot of examples, and so you should not have to start from scratch. We'll learn later how to copy those from one DGN library to another. But just looking at some of these examples, here is for an entry for station tick marks where it draws a line, and that line is given a length based on a 1-to-1 scale. Here we have the major station labels, which puts in a text favorite called major stations, and all of the information pertinent to that particular major station label. And so here, for example, we have the intervals, and we've told it that we want to place stations. And so you'll see all the different categories here. If I wanted to label a bearing label, that is going to be placing text. The element template tells us the symbology. The location tells us where to put it. So in this example, I want to put that in a horizontal component on the line and in the middle. So that puts it in the middle of our tangents. And we can tell it, control the rotation. For example, we want a tangent rotation. And we are going to place a text favorite that labels the bearing of our line. And we also want it to be able to manage modifications. So if I manually move that label after the automated annotation, it will remember that I've moved it and maintain that difference. We can also label the lengths of lines. We can label the curve labels, for example, where we have a text favorite that has all of our curve label information. We can place circles. For example, if our cardinal stations required a circle, we can specify that diameter, and we can also specify, if we wanted to, a different element template, perhaps, than what the text may be placed. And so we have a lot of different ways to work with our annotation. Here is a cardinal station for the left curve, and we can label that particular location of station. And if you look in the horizontal components here, for example, it's a left arc or spiral left, and we're going to label the beginning and the end of that curve. We can label the point of beginning or the point of end, and there's really basically hardly any limitations as to what you can build your labels on. And this annotation manager is where you will do all of your development.